Hello and welcome to a very different episode of D54. It's just me, Amit, here talking on the mic and talking about this movie, Kantara. I just watched last night and I thought I'd just get on the podcast, get on the YouTube video and talk about it a little bit because it blew my mind in many ways. Yeah, I was a pretty big fan of this movie. It's pretty cool. And I had a lot to sort of talk about. Have a lot to talk about. So, yeah, let me get straight into it. Kantara 2022 mega blockbuster hit, the mystery action thriller from the Sandalwood industry. So this is the first movie that we're doing that's from this particular industry, like the Kannada language industry. We've done quite a few Malayalam movies. We've done a couple of Tamil movies, I think, and we've done a Telugu movie. But straight away, you can tell this movie's it's pretty different. I think I could notice the differences between this and some of the other ones we reviewed. And, I want to get into, Rishab Shetty because this guy, he wrote, directed, and he was a main star in this movie, which is pretty incredible, I think. And honestly, I can't think of too many instances where this has happened. If there's anyone listening, do let me know because my mind went straight to Sylvester Stallone and what he sort of did with the Rocky franchise. He was the first guy in Hollywood to sort of do that, and he got paid the big bucks for it. Even though he wasn't the biggest star in Hollywood at the time, the fact that he directed and wrote and was a star of the movie was a huge deal. So I want to know, is this a huge deal? I mean, I haven't heard of this in any of the other movies that we've watched. So credit to Rishab Shetty. It's pretty commendable what he did. And look, the writing was great. The direction was great, and he was fantastic. So he ticks all the boxes. He's definitely a very talented, individual. But yeah, straight away, this movie was so interesting to me. Like it takes us to a place which I've not explored this region at all, or this area of cinema. It's like a culture within a culture, maybe even within a culture. Like it's exploring some really deep themes, which I just, was mesmerized by. Like, just to begin with, the narration at the start told a pretty cool story about the kings and the ancestors and this demigod that's there. But it really was a great start because then we see the performance, the Buta Kola, which seems to be localized, as I said. So it's localized to Tulu Nadu, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like I know about Karnataka and I know about Mangalore, but I didn't know it was a state. Is it a state? I'm just reading what I'm seeing on Wikipedia, but yeah, pretty interesting. It seems like it's this sort of tradition is popular within parts of Tulu Nadu, Mangalore, Udupi, and it seems like it's related to the Kerala dance. Theam is it called? I'm just again reading on Wikipedia. And it looks like that. There's a lot of similarities in the dance style, the makeup, the style of it. I'm not sure what the origins are in the background, but look, what a start. Like, that was impactful, great, absolutely loved it. In your face. And yeah, the screaming, really. Like, at the start, I was like, okay, is this done over the top? But it just blended in well. It just created that drama, that effect that I really wanted in this movie. One thing I also wanted to talk about was how authentic this movie felt. I've said this about a lot of Indian movies and how they always give us a great representation of sort of the culture that they live in. And this movie, Kantara, I think takes it to a whole nother level. Like, I mentioned it before in some movies I've seen, like Minu Murali, which really, and even like movies like Gargi, which sort of show you the daily lives of these people. Like they live in a village. We see them, going on boats to here and there. We see the struggles they have on a daily basis. We see the importance of family. But this movie, like, it just goes to a whole different direction because we see very early on, we see this buffalo racing competition, which is performed by, Shiva, his friends, and a whole bunch of other people. I'm not sure what this is about, but I'm not even sure if this is, again, is this localized to just what's it called, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, or is this something that's prevalent throughout all of India? It was great to see. It was cool to see. I actually really enjoyed it. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, by the way, do consider checking out our YouTube channel, because I'm going to be putting some videos here and there, I think, for this one, because I think it's just, there's a lot to sort of visualize. And with me just talking, you might want to see something other than me just talking. Um, but yeah, the Buffalo racing was pretty cool. I know it was a short scene to start with, but it gives us a glimpse into this culture, which I really find makes movies really authentic. It's being real and showing us things that someone like me, a Westerner, basically growing up. Um, it's cool. It's really nice to see, and great introduction to some of the characters as well during that point, and some of the dynamics they have. They did other small things like that, and I've got to give a special thanks to my wife, who I watched this movie with. So she's actually from Karnataka, so she understood some of the intricacies that were going on. There was one like funny scene. I don't know if it was funny or not, but it blew my mind because one of the, I think it's the ladies, Leela's dad, when he first, like early on when he comes to the house to meet um Shiva, to ask about getting her a job with the landlord and all that stuff. He takes out like some powder and he snorts it, and I was like, I was kind of blown away. I was like, what's he doing? Is that cocaine? And I was like, cocaine? Like it seems so out of place, So she informed me that apparently a lot of elders have this like powder which they use to clear their nose or something like that. Obviously, a very localized traditional thing which they do, and stuff like that just adds this authenticity to the movie, which makes you go like, what was that? Someone like me, and then you do something like you try to figure out what's going on. Other things like they had the festival, and I think when they're doing the festival at the start, he's like doing the dance, and then like the next day it's still going on. I was confused because I thought it was over, for instance. But the whole police battle which they have early on, regarding telling the police officers telling them don't put fireworks and do all that drama the next day. I was confused because I thought it was over, but apparently it was still going. Stuff like that, like it's this is one that you have to sort of, I feel like you have to understand some of the culture to really get an idea as to what this movie is actually about and really appreciate it for what it is. And I love that about this. Like this challenges you as a viewer to learn more, which is a great testament to any movie. I think you can if you walk away from a movie and want to know more about a certain culture or certain way of life, this movie does it awesome. But speaking of way of life, I'll just get on to the characters now because, oof, my God. I think one of my favorite parts of this movie might have been just the dynamics between these characters in this sort of community, in this village. It was so cool to watch. I loved it. All of them had phenomenal performances. Like, I've got to give a lot of credit to all the cast here. Whether it's Murli, played by Kishore, uh, I loved him. He might have been my favorite character. Just hard nosed, straight laced, borderline angry all the time. But he's got a sense of dignity and a sense of pride to him, which he wants to protect the forest. Which, again, talking about authenticity and cultural stuff, like there's a department, there's a department of forestry here as well. But there's not. I haven't seen a police force, associated with that. Even like in Hollywood stuff, I've never seen a police force dedicated to just forest. So that again challenged me because I was like, wait, this is a police force just for the forest? Are they also for the community? Or is there a different police force for the community? I wasn't sure on that. But again, a nice little insight got me thinking about, okay, wow, there's some stuff happening here, like the hunting that we saw, which is obviously, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but it's obviously looked down upon from what it seems like. So, got a little insight to that. But the police officer, I thought was fantastic. He was cool. Like, I really enjoyed his character. Every time he was on screen, I really enjoyed him because he was like this. I don't know. Like, I enjoy like this hard nosed cops. I've seen a few of them in some other movies, but he did a phenomenal performance, and he was such a good contrast to Shiva and his sort of gang of hooligans who sort of were sort of happy-go-lucky, arrogant to an extent. But, he was great. I loved him. The landlord was really great. I've actually seen him in a few other Kannada movies. I've seen a few Kannada movies, but none that I can really remember too well. But Achut Kumar, he's just great, so charismatic, and I love his turn. At the start, he's like a landlord. Doesn't seem like there's much to him until we find out later on, the history and what he wants, and his desires, and things like that. And when he switches, I mean, some of those scenes towards the end, when he's sitting down on the seat, he pulled it off. He pulled it off great. Like he was great, menacing. Despite his small frame, small figure. He's not a big overbearing guy. He's actually just, he looks like a regular guy you'd see on the street. Like, when I go shopping, I might see somebody like him. But yeah, he just carries it off really well. I thought it was fantastic. Leela, of course, she was great. I love the conflict that she found herself in. Like, it was really interesting to me to be like, what is she going to do here? Obviously, she used the power of influence, and there was a bit of commentary around that from the cop. I like that. Like he puts her in the deep end, maybe even a bit unfairly, but you could tell he was obviously a bit annoyed at the fact that she got this job through his influence, rather than merit perhaps. So there was a good little dynamic there, and I felt really bad for her a lot of the time. The actress also again pulled it off really well. Leela, played by Saptami Gowda. Not heard anything about her before, but yeah, played this really cool, like conflicted, like sort of meek person that's kind of like, oh, what do I do in this situation? It's really tough for me. Thought she was fantastic, and of course, I'll leave sort of the best for last, Rishab Shetty, who sort of carried this in many different ways. A real dynamic performance, I would say. One, he's embodying the god, and my God, is it impactful? It is like, it grabs you every time he's on screen, and credit to all the camera work and the technical stuff in this movie as well, because the way they shoot like the dance scenes, to the action scenes, I was a fan of basically everything that they did in this movie technically as well. The music was great, and I know there's some controversy behind it. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but overall, I thought the music was fantastic. The again, cinematography was great. The shooting was great. How they showed off the land was awesome. I always love that. It was interesting because I saw Tulu Nadu, Mangalore on a map, and it seems like it's more coastal, but this is inland, but it looks beautiful. So that was an interesting decision that they made to have it in the forest, which was cool. But Rishab Shetty was, he carried this, he carried this really well, I felt. Had a really interesting performance and had a lot to do. Like he really, had a lot to do on and off the movie. But even in the movie, he just had a lot. I like the bits of humor in there as well. They sort of kept me going and engaged. I thought it was pretty funny at times. The scene when they were sort of in prison hatching a plan, and then it just turned out to be silly. His dynamic with the cop was great. That little battle. His dynamic with the landlord was great. And sort of, landlord trying to use Rishab Shetty, Shiva to take over, to beat down the cop or something like that. Mind games and politics going on here and there. Some of the scenes, like when he's like smoking up or getting high or something like that, I didn't know if he was channeling the demigod or anything like that. But yeah, his expressions were great. It was fantastic. Before I go to the movie, I do want to talk about one thing which really got me thinking about. So when I started this movie, like it sort of starts off very much on that sort of spiritual path, right? The demigod coming to life. So I was thinking, is this movie going to take the approach of something that's going to be like, like a more spiritual kind of movie? Like, is the God going to be present throughout? And we're going to see hints of it here and there throughout the movie. But it didn't really go down that path. It felt like the demigod was contained to almost the start and the end. And boy, I want to talk about the end there. That was fantastic. But it seemed like the demigod would be more involved throughout the movie. But it's sort of hinted at, and the story's hinted at. I want to get the viewers' this opinion on this, because like I don't know why they didn't go down that path, but I suspect it's because doing something like that makes this movie become very niche and not as mainstream as sort of what it is. I mean, this is a blockbuster mega hit. I think it's made the second most money in the whole industry after the recent KGF 2, I think. So I wonder why they did that, because I would be interested to see if the demigod would be possessing people more or things like that. But it seems to only come and go at very particular times. Just one point which I just wanted to touch on, because the movie was really, it became like more of a sort of a village's battle for land. Um, that's what the story was about, with a bit of demigodness or the cultural stuff in there, which had a huge impact though. But yeah, the movie itself, man, like this was it's a 2 hour and 30-minute movie. Not long with the credits either. The credits wrapped up pretty fast, so there was no 10-minute credit time or anything like that. It just wrapped up really quickly. But 2 hours and 30 minutes, pretty spectacular because again, like it was really engaging. I was gripped the whole time, even the whole dynamic, and what are they going to do about the land, and what's the forest officer going to do? I think after about an hour and a half, I think that's when it sort of starts changing a little bit. Yeah, I'm getting like an hour 43 is when it sort of flips over to when we see the death of Gorov. Uh, I think that's where it sort of really starts to trigger. Like that's like the height of the movie, I think. But even before that, all the establishment of the characters, as I said before, is fantastic, and the stories that they're going through, really interesting to me. I really enjoyed it. Um, there was a lot in this. Like the plot was thick. I thought they went through a lot. If you were looking for a deep story, this had it. Like it was interesting to see the position that Shiva was in, trying to fight for his land, and he sort of seems like he's not the most respected. Which I also sort of liked his swagger at the start when he takes a medal and he's just wearing it around and telling everybody about it. Like he's a very proud person, um, which is pretty cool to see. I just enjoyed that introduction of him. So yeah, I like that sort of battle that they had for the tribal land and sort of what to do with it. It was again a pretty interesting concept to sort of watch. The battle of the forest versus the community, what to do. They paint the cop as a villain for most of the movie, I guess, but you never really feel he's a villain because all he's doing is his job, and he's very noble at what he's doing. You know, he goes through the hard yards. Geez, he almost gets killed a few times, doesn't he? Um, he has a tree fall on him. He shoots a gun and gets his eye injured. Um, the guy gets it pretty bad. Um, but like as I said, like there was a lot to sort of like in this. The relationship between Leela and Shiva was interesting. I don't know if it was as fleshed out as it could have been, but I think there was enough substance in there to sort of just keep you engaged. Like he's obviously a very hard headed man, and she's obviously I guess he grows on her over time, especially after he sort of helps her out with getting a job with the landlord and all that stuff. In the not the landlord, sorry, the police department. Yeah, a lot to really like in this movie. Um, but I'll talk about sort of the second half and sort of when it really escalates. Oof, man, that second half when it really picks up. And I'll talk about the last, like, whatever it was, 15, 20, 30 minutes when the possession comes into, um, when he gets possession. But then he got his possession of Shiva, the father spirit and all that stuff. But even just before that, like just that end scene, I can talk about that for a bit. Like the battle for the land, I like how it's built up because Shiva, he goes to his house, the landlord's house. Um, the landlord, or something landlord, what's his name? Devendra. He goes to Devendra's house, and he steps inside, which is obviously a disrespectful thing to do. Again, a small little cultural thing which I didn't really understand why that was a thing like that. Is it because he's treated like he's the president, like Devendra. He's like respected at all odds. Like to the village, he is everything, which is really good because if they illustrate it at the start, you see how much impact it has at the end. So he's obviously cheated them. He's got Gaurav killed brutally as well, may I say, like stabbed to death and left there, just to die. Pretty interesting way to do it, but yeah, when they all culminate at the end and we have that sort of final battle scene, that battle scene was cool. I would say some of the fight scenes in this I wasn't a huge fan of. I think early on, one of the early ones, there were too many quick cuts and I couldn't really see what was going on. I'm never a fan of quick cuts unless they're done really creatively. But one of the earlier fight scenes I wasn't the biggest fan of. But then I think towards the end, every fight scene at the end was great. So whether it's Rishab Shetty taking on the entire, what is it, like 10 people that he's fighting after he smoked a little bit with Goro's father. Um, the sword fighting was cool. Like, the cinematography was pretty cool with this. I enjoyed it. Rishab Shetty has a lot of, and my wife also mentioned this, a lot of uh, junior NTR sort of energy, and maybe it's just the way he looks, like very reminiscent of him in RRR and some of sort of the fight scenes here. It could have easily fit into that movie, but yeah, some of the choreography was really great. Like I enjoyed that, and then when sort of it becomes like the tribe versus, I guess the, the rowdies or the bad guys who are hired by Devendra. That's it was a cool scene. Like had weight to it, right? Like I felt bad when a lot of the people died. Like um, like he takes your rifle, and again another cultural thing. It's like a hunting rifle. It's not like a shotgun or anything like that. So again, pretty localized. But he takes a rifle and he shoots down one of his friends, and you sort of see the pain that he has and what he's going through. And he actually dies. Like she actually dies. Like at that point when it happens, I'm kind of like, they're not gonna kill him off. How can they kill him off? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like and obviously I knew that he's not gonna die, but he does in a way. So respect to them for following through on that. Respect for Rishab Shetty for following through on that. For Christ's sake, it's his movie. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like and the little fight scenes they had, like, was he was definitely outnumbered at times, and it was a bit unrealistic. But look, this movie is not one that's grounded in realism. I would say, there is some stuff that's embellished, such as the cutting down a tree and making it land on a cop car randomly. Like the chances of that are ridiculously low. And some of the fight scenes are crazy. But look, I don't care. I don't need every movie to be realistic like that. I was enjoying the hell out of it. So let's touch on that final scene. Wow, that was cool. That was really cool. His performance. Wow. Rishab Shetty's performance. I'll talk on a bit here, to sort of show sort of what I enjoyed about it. But my God, like when it takes over his body, it's like he's possessed. Like the actor is possessed. It's so riveting. It's so engaging. And the screaming and shouting. I mean, I love the screaming throughout the movie. Like as his call in the movie, it's a cool like battle cry, I found. But like, yeah, towards us the end when he's possessed and the body is shaking and doing all that stuff, it's fantastic. I've not seen a performance or a demonstration of that in that way. Like we saw it early on when I think one of the villagers in the flashback before, when the king is around, he's sort of possessed. And even that is a great intro. But Rishab Shetty does it. It takes over to like a whole different level. And it's extended and he's beating up everybody. He's got the force, but he's also possessed. So it's fantastic. It was like, wow. Imagine, I would have loved to have seen this in the cinema. If you did see this in the cinema, wow, good on you for going out and watching it, because this scene itself would have been worth it, I think. Like, I mean, this movie itself, it would have been great in cinema because it's just a visually great movie. It's very real. It's not a CGI heavy movie or anything like that. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, that end scene. Really enjoyed it. It had some really good moments. I felt really bad for, I think there's one point, the taller guy who choked Rishab to death. He threw a smaller guy at, at the demigod to just get mutilated. Yeah, it was a cool fight scene. There was a lot going on. I really enjoyed it. My only critique is of the fight scene, and I really kind of was disappointed by this actually. The very end, I don't know why they chose the decision to have the blade go across the screen and finish the movie like that. Would have liked to see something cool, like actually Devendra, because I'm sure, like the actor again, Achyut Kumar, he would have pulled it off great, like a cool death, like that would have been awesome. Really good to see. I don't know if they wanted to tie in the staircase thing again, because that was early on, and they kept referencing vomiting in his own blood. Like that itself is so graphic and so brutal. But I wonder if they could have done a bit better. with that really that just a final cutscene. I wasn't a fan of that. I would have liked to sort of see some closure to that. Either him dying and him just turning to the camera at the end and showing us that he's possessed. Um, and I guess at the very end as well, I actually had to rewind the scene a few times because I was trying to interpret what happened after all of that. And I think it is a little open for interpretation, but I think I got it in the end. Uh, the dance scene at the very end when he's possessed. Now I was a little confused as to thinking, has he been possessed for all this time, or has it been in and out? If you watch it carefully, as I did, I think it gets to a point where he's not possessed, and then suddenly he becomes possessed because he's like normal, and then something happens, and then he looks up and he screams. So I think he's in and out of possession during this time. Looks like he's married to Lila, and Lila is pregnant. So that's happened. Um, cool. That's obviously setting up the next movie. I don't know if Rishab Shetty's going to play the son again. Like he's played the father. Well, I guess then he would have played his grandfather, the father, and the son, which is crazy. But look, he might do that. But yeah, the end scene, like I think I got it in the end, and it's pretty cool because I rewatched the dance scene. If you watch it carefully, actually, it's telling a story in itself. Like it's telling us, and it's cool. Like we get to see interpretation of dance and how that can be used as storytelling, which I think a lot of what the Takala is sort of about, and even Tayam and the Malayalam language as well, and the Malayalam tradition also does a similar thing where it's about a performance, but it's also about a message and a devotion or something like that. But when he's possessed by the demigod, it's interesting because I think he's obviously telling the cop, and he calls the cop out, to be like, "Hey, come here," I think at some time I got confused. I thought that maybe the cop had married Lila for some reason, to be honest, because he kept doing the baby rocking, and I thought he was saying that baby is now yours or something like that, or take care of your baby. But I think it was just like it's more in the way of you are my child or something like that is what I'm understanding. So it was great visual feast for that as well. I actually enjoyed watching that, and the dance of his so hypnotic, so cool. Watched it a few times, and again, yeah, Rishab Shetty's facial expressions, the makeup, the costume, the music. Um, Again, credit to everyone involved with this. It was great to watch. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was just great to watch. At the very end, also, so it looks like he's also disappeared. Now, one thing I went back and forth on with my wife a little bit about this was like, I don't know why he disappeared. Because at the very start of the movie, it seems like he's provoked by the previous landlord. Because I did like that debate that he had. Like, are you actually possessed or are you just a performer? Are you acting here? I want to know. So he challenges him, and then the demigod tells him, like, look, if I'm a performer, you'll see me again. If I'm a demigod, you won't see me again, and you'll be vomiting your own blood. And that's an impactful start that we had. In the end, I don't know what he did. He sort of finished a ritual, and then he goes off and he meets the spirit of his father, also possessed by the god. So he looks like he gets also he becomes a god himself or something like that because he goes to they disappear, which is my interpretation of them just going, surrendering to light or something like that. They're just gone away from this world. No one chases him this time. He just disappears, because there's no sun or the villagers don't chase him. So I'm wondering why did he do it? Now, my only understanding of that is that his time is done. He's done what he's had to done. He's passed on the protection of the land, this time to the cop. And that makes sense. That's really good. I actually really like that because the cop was one of the most noble people in this movie. Probably, yeah, he was the most noble person in this movie. He just wanted what was good for the forest and the land and the people, which is what, early on the landlord was meant to do until the whole corruption came and all that stuff. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I did enjoy that ending in the end. And I did enjoy the fact watching it at home on Amazon Prime because, yeah, I could just go back and rewatch it a few times and really appreciate it. I think that'll basically do it from this movie. Overall, as you can tell, I'm a pretty big fan of this movie. I enjoyed it a lot. We have our D scale where we rank movies. I'm sure as if you're listening to the podcast, you would know by now. But this to me is like a very high dynamite. It might be one of my favorite movies I've watched all year. In fact, it is one of the favorite movies I've watched all year, and it's probably even high among even in the Indian movies I've watched. Again, that cultural element to me is really important, and I'm glad that they don't shy away from it. They're not scared to put that because these movies now are so big that they reach international audiences. I don't think they're um, saying localized anymore. So to put something like that, this kind of movie, which is so foreign to foreigners and Westerners, sort of like me, it can be a bit confusing, I think. But good on them for saying screw it. Like this is our land, this is our country, this is our tradition, and we want to show the world what it's about. I really love that. I've seen that in lots of movies. This movie probably does it even better than anything I've even seen. We saw some great action. We saw some great performances. Yeah, this is a very high dynamite. It's very close to dope, which is our highest. So yeah, that's really it for me. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about this movie for half an hour now. If you are still around to share, like, subscribe, and please get involved with the comments because I love talking to people about these movies. It's my favorite part of anything to have these conversations and to understand more, especially about this one. Thanks a lot, everyone, and I will see you on the next one.